at the end of the day, we all realize that there's another side of the coin. You can say, well, energy security is important, so let's go back to using 5 years ago energy structure. On the other hand, you can also say that, well, because energy security is important, so we need to move forward faster. I do hope that all governments are thinking on the latter way.
Hello, I'm Noelle Lim on ASEAN Speaks by Maybank Investment Banking Group. A bellwether company of Thailand's economy, Siam Cement Group or SCG, plans to achieve 20% reduction in net greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. I speak to the CEO of SCG, Roongrote Rangsiyopash, and the CEO of SCG Chemicals, Tanawong Areeratchakul, about their sustainability plans and obstacles of two of the group's main businesses, cement building materials and chemicals. Globally, the cement industry is considered to be one of the top polluters. We also discussed the implications of the inflationary environment and the Russian-Ukraine war and how the group is preparing itself. To kick off, Roongrote gives us an overview of the group's sustainability priorities.
We have what we call ESG pathway. This involves 4.5 metrics. One is in terms of the net zero, basically greenhouse gas reduction, reducing the emission, and so on. Secondly is what we call go green. Go green mean greening our products, greening our service, making sure that we involve in the activities that create sustainability within our value chain. For example, involvement of cement in the green construction industry, involvement of green polymer in terms of the BCG for the chemicals industry, that kind of things. Third is the reducing inequality. That's basically, social dimensions. This is done through helping the SME, helping our supply chain in order to improve the competencies and the well-being, plus enhancing the opportunities for these people to advance in the society. Third is the collaboration. That's basically collaborating not only within our supply chain, but at the same time collaborating with the other outside organization. And lastly, that's what I call 4+. Plus is in terms of the governance, in terms of the transparency, making sure that we take care of the stakeholder opinion before we do things and so on. So that's our overall ESG plus 4+ pathway.
Siam Cement Group plans to spend $2 billion on CO2 reduction by 2030. What are the top 3 priorities that must be achieved to meet the temperature limits in the Paris Accord by 2030?
One, the first priority is in terms of energy transition, making sure that we use the lowest energy content available in the production process, making sure that we substitute the high carbon energies to low carbon energies. So that's one priority. Second priority is do invest in the technology. Do invest in the technology and try to prototyping it, co-creating the products that can be used not only in our industry, but also in the other industry as well, so that we can make the carbon capturing process to be the lowest cost possible. And third is making sure that you put extra efforts in terms of the, we call it climate solution, returning green back to the society. That's, I think, a combination of the S, which is social, and also E. That will be the 3 priorities that we'll work on.
The majority of the carbon dioxide emissions from cement production are from mineral resources that are not renewable in the short term. And also I understand there's also the difficulty to eliminate the emissions is also because there are strong emissions from chemical reactions during the production of cement. What are some solutions are you looking at to reduce the emissions in the production and the extractive part of the business?
Cement business is one of the major polluters in terms of the greenhouse gas. That's coming, not only from the energy used in the process, but also the process of making cement itself is generating the carbon dioxide to the environment. In terms of energy, we can do in terms of using the alternative energies, making sure that the production process deploy the most energy efficiencies that are available to us in the market. But because the fact that the process itself of making cement also generate emission, that's something that we cannot solve. We can make it more efficient, but at the end of the day, it's still there. So the way is to do this is to capture the carbon that generates from the production process. That one, the technology is there available, but I guess the question is that whether the market or whether producers, how each parties can absorb that, how manufacturers can absorb and pay and make investment for that, how the society or how the customers can pay the extra cost of absorbing carbons that generated and going back into to the earth. That's, I think, the challenge that we all have to face one way or another.
Kun Tanawong, would you like to weigh in?
Many people talking about carbon capture, but now, in the medium and long term, now many people talking about carbon dioxide conversion. So you can do something like convert carbon dioxide to the other chemical that can be used for other application. We met some company in Europe. Now they develop those kind of technology. There's a lot of collaboration between chemical and cement business. Sometimes they plan to carbon dioxide to be other chemical. Hopefully that they can make. They can scale up.
We can do a lot of things in terms of reducing the emission, making sure that the products that we introduce and sell to the market is lower carbon in terms of manufacturing. But we also have to make sure that the products that we produce is being used in such a way that is creating lower carbon, lower environmental problems to the society as well. For example, if we do a good job in terms of supplying cement and concrete to the major construction projects, making sure that the waste from construction is minimum or is minimized. At the same time, making sure that the way that we construct, the way that our customer construct the projects is in such a way that use our products to the maximum values to the projects. Not only the values from the commercial reason, but also from the environmental reason as well. That's what I mean by green construction.
The solutions that Kun Tanawong talked about, when would they be commercially viable in your view?
Actually last year I visited one company in Netherlands, and what we have learned, now they have a kind of a pilot unit that they can convert carbon dioxide to the other chemical. We have a plan for collaboration to use those chemicals for some kind of application. So I think this is like medium to long term until to scale up this kind of technology.
So SCG Chemicals is going for an IPO. Are there plans to further break up the group to unlock its value and ring-fencing the cement group separately, as it would be incurring high decarbonization cost?
That's something that at this point we have really not fixed yet on what we're planning to do. I guess our priority right now is to look for the possibility for the chemical first.
Looking at the petrochemical production business, it's still mainly derived from fossil-based products, oil and natural gas, because it's cheaper. What's the demand outlook for moving towards more environmentally friendly chemicals? Kun Tanawong, could you address this?
Many petrochemical companies now, they are moving to the cleaner product. I mean, low carbon footprint product. And in addition, the major brand owner looking for the clean polymer for their packaging requirement. Most of them announce that they need, at least maybe 30 to 50% of recycled product for their packaging requirement. So this is something that we believe the recycled polymer demand is definitely growing. And as you may know, that SCG Chemical we has already made a move. We have our investment in Europe for the post-consumer resin. This is sometimes people call the mechanical recycling. And we also have chemical recycling. Sometimes they call advanced chemical recycling. Last year, we complete our demonstration unit and we complete the test and we received the ISCC Plus certification for the whole value chain. So we have already provided some product to customer. And now we have collaboration with Toyo Engineering, to scale up the unit. So this kind of thing, at least we can help reduce using the fossil base. And I believe that if we can move faster, this one can help our SCG Chemical and our position to have a cleaner chemical company.
What can help you move faster? For example, do we need to see more demand from China?
A big picture. I think European country now focus a lot on the recycled material. You can see for many regulation for many countries. For example, in UK, they announced that all packaging need to be at least 30% of the recycled material. Otherwise, you have to pay additional price, for the virgin. I would say that demand in Europe will be, growing faster. Some people mention maybe double-digit growth in Europe. So that's why we start, our footprint in Europe, and we also try to leverage, back to Thailand and ASEAN. So for China, I guess that they may try to do the same because they also have commitment for those decarbonization. But if we compare, I think European countries will move faster.
Kun Roongrote?
We are seeing that the market transition is there. It looks like with the kind of conflict that we are seeing in the Ukraine, we also speed up the energy transitions. And I'm sure with the energy transition being accelerated, the market transitions means that the requirement by the consumers, requirement by the business to be more greener and so on will come faster. But at the same time, we know that the market alone in this really, major change is not going to be enough. You require not only the market transitions, but also the regulatory transitions. That's something that I think is a challenge because, any countries cannot do by its own country itself. Thailand cannot just say, well, we're making change in the regulatory and it's going to work. No, we have to work with the other countries. That's something that will be a big challenge that I foresee in the future. And the last one is that you have market transitions, you have regulatory transitions. Also, for all of this to work, we need collaboration. In countries like Thailand, we're seeing a lot of collaboration, not only among the industry, but also among the people in the same value chain. I do hope that we can expand that. And that's something that I think the private sectors can do.
What we have learned from European country regulation, I do believe we can leverage back to Thailand, like how to separate, how to collect the waste, back to the system. So if we can learn, the process And we have a know-how, so it's been that we can leverage those kind of technology back to Thailand and ASEAN, and we can do things better.
Do you have a sense when China and the US may start to change their regulations to follow what Europe is doing?
They're talking about it. Okay, it seems like with the situation as a result of the conflict in the Russia-Ukraine, I'm not so sure whether they keep the same intensity of the change like a year ago. When the US government new administration came into the picture, there has been a lot of talk about green infrastructure, invest in the electrification and so on and so forth. But now we're talking about, okay, because of the energy security, then we need to go back to the traditional energy source. That's from what we are seeing. China, more or less the same thing, when we're saying that, energy security is more important than everything else, then I guess, it's kind of slowed down the momentum a little bit. I do hope that at the end of the day, we all realize that there's another side of the coin. You can say, well, energy security is important, so let's go back to using 5 years ago energy structure. On the other hand, you can also say that, well, because energy security is important, so we need to move forward faster. I do hope that all governments are thinking on the latter way.
I may add for China, you may know that they have what they call the dual control policy. They control the energy consumption per GDP growth. They control the emission, and they have like a 5-year plan to reduce, for those kind of consumption of the, energy and carbon dioxide emission. From those kind of regulation, I believe that they have to do some plan, in terms of not only petrochemical, but I mean other industrial that consume a lot of energy and high carbon dioxide emission. So this is something that's going to happen. And for US, we have learned that now there's some private company, they develop a technology to recycle more plastic waste. And they have many technology that already come to the demonstration unit. So I think that they also move along the same approach and direction.
So the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, will the group be a net beneficiary, or will it incur a net cost?
I think we will be just like everyone else. In the short term, I think everyone will be affected. The situations create a lot of uncertainty, create more inflationary pressures to the business and also to the consumers. I think it remains to be seen how this inflation, how this escalated costs will do to the consumer demand. So far, we don't see the impact yet. We're still seeing a strong consumer demand at the end of the value chain. But I guess the question is that, how long will that last? And that all depends on how the conflict will last and what's the end point of the conflict. But at the end of the day, I also believe that in every crisis, there are opportunities as well into the motivation, into the efforts in order to make changes in your organizations and your industry. And I think we are at a camp where we see this as the catalyst in terms of helping us to transform faster, helping us to be greener faster, helping us to be more convinced to put more money in the process to become cleaner. That's our direction.
So at this point, you don't see the conflict having much impact yet, but possibly in the second half of the year or maybe next year?
So I guess the question is that, what if this lasts, the real big problems last until next year? I'm sure that if you're talking about next year, then I'm sure that the demand will be impacted.
The Russian-Ukraine war, what's the worst case scenario you're projecting?
I'm not the one to answer that in terms of how and how long it will end. From the business standpoint, we know that this is situations still exist today. We don't know the uncertainties, but we know that there are a few things that we can do. First, we can improve efficiencies in terms of how we deploy the energies. Secondly, we know that a lot of projects that we're doing in terms of energy diversification, in terms of coming up with greener product and so on, that can be accelerated, and we're willing to do that. Third, we know that with this uncertainty, we have to make sure that we watch our financial structure closely. So that's something that we do that. We make sure that our debt is not getting out of hand. We know that we have some commitment for the projects like projects of SCG Chemicals, doing the petrochemical complex in Vietnam. That's something that we have to lock and make sure that the financing of it will not be any problems. It's only about, we're talking 7-8 months before we can actually start commercializing it. So we are almost the end, and we know that the market can absorb it. So making sure that we can start and complete that kind of project is also important. But at the same time, if we have other projects coming in, newer projects coming in, we know that we have to make sure that we have to employ really diligence process in terms of capital cost of the project, making sure that we crossing all the I's and T's in terms of exercising the project's management.
In terms of inflation, how do you read the situation in 2022?
I think definitely we're seeing not only the first quarter, I do doubt that at least second quarter for sure it will be high, and hopefully the second half we're seeing that it will not go out of hand. But again, we're talking about inflation coming out cost, coming out tighter supply chain. So that's something that we have to address it that way.
Kun Tanawong, would you like to add what opportunities do you foresee in this inflationary environment?
I think, based on the crisis, and you will see the higher energy costs. And of course, we will likely to see the faster energy transition. On one hand, of course, we have the challenging issue that we have to manage. But on the other hand, with those the energy transition, we also see some opportunity. Like now we put ourselves in the circular economy. So the demand for the clean product, demand for the low carbon footprint will pick up, and some activity like EV and renewable energy. For those kind of activity from the energy transition, you can see that the demand for example, for EV. I think typically, if you compare the EV and the internal combustion engine, they require more polymer, actually 30-40% more than the internal combustion engine. So it means that if they move faster, we can see the demand will grow faster as well. And for renewable energy, you can see that they need some, actually PV module they call backsheet that produced from the polyethylene, special polyethylene. So demand is growing fast, and you also need more cable actually. So it means that the polymer for those type application will pick up. So this is, of course, on one hand you see some challenging in terms of cost, but on the other hand, we see that some certain area the demand will pick up.
You're still optimistic despite Europe might experience a recession as a result of the Russian-Ukraine war?
They have a very strong regulation, and they have a kind of solid plan for the decarbonization, for the clean approach. So I think it doesn't matter that, of course, there may be inflation. But in terms of the, basic need, consumer product packaging that, you're talking about either flexible packaging or rigid packaging that people use for the consumer product. They still need those kind of clean product. So it means that I still believe the demand for those clean products still strong.
I think if you look at the customer into two segments, the lower end of the segment, the other is on the upper end of the segment. On the lower end, of course, recession will hit them hard. And I think they will just consume less, period. But on the upper end of the segment, they can afford it, and they probably have more resistance to recession, pressure than the lower end. That one, I think the green trend and the behaviors of the customers to take up more greener products will continue. That's why I think that, at the end of the day, I do expect that we will find the greener segment of the market will continue to be outpacing the remaining of the market. We have a unit called Clean Energy business unit going into renewable, invest in the technology that allowing us to make a transition of the energy content faster, that kind of thing. So, it's the two-pronged strategy. One is greening the existing business unit. The other is getting involved and invest, and hopefully, that side of business is a growing trend, and I do hope that it can become our core business one day. So that would be another side of the strategy.
Well, looking at diversity, it's quite common that industrial type businesses tend to have less female employees. And so in your group, female employees are about 22% of total workforce and 25% of management. What are the plans to support greater diversity, equity and inclusion?
That's something that we do see is our shortcomings. As you know, we see tremendous potential for the diversified workforce. For a group like us to have only 20 to 23% of female employees, that's not really good situation. On the other hand, we are seeing that if we just look at the non-manufacturing workforce, the group of the female employees now is close to about 75%. In the service and in the retails, that is about 60%. So of course, on that front, that segment of the business, the ratio is higher, which is good, but it's something that we have to improve upon on the manufacturing part of the organizations. That's something that we intend to do. Our plan is to improve upon that, and we have set the target to increase it so that we are close to about 27% in the next 3 or 4 years.
Why 27% and say not 30%?
The 20% is coming from the improvement in both front, both manufacturing and also both service. So it just come up to be around that. But I guess, if we can do better than 27, we sure will strive on it. We are having a few programs that we come up with. For example, having a better succession planning all along that include more diversity in the succession pool. Secondly, we come up with a group of peer counseling, peer advising, and so on for women and other diversified groups within our company as well. So we're having the kind of peer supporting groups in order to help as well. We're learning as we're going along, and we are taking a lot of questions, taking a lot of comments, taking a lot of advices from various experts in this area in order for us to improve.
Why are there less women in manufacturing? I know it's quite universal, but I'm just wondering in the case of SCG Any insights on that? Why less women gravitate towards that part of the business?
Actually, the whole SCG, when you're talking about engineer level, I think that we have a lot of women. But in terms of protection, sometimes, when you have a very difficult job that, like the condition itself, you have to work 24/7. And we also, we have to make sure we provide a very good safety for them. And this is if you're talking about safety and environmental engineer or staff, I think this one the women can support. I think the question that we have to ask ourselves, how can we ensure that we can provide them with a very good condition of working? I think this is something that what we have in our mind. That's why you can see, in terms of non-manufacturing, we have a really high percentage. Because I used to look after the vice president of the corporate function. I think, believe it or not, some function we have, women more than 90%. This happen actually.
When improving general working conditions, even the men would benefit from it as well.
Yes.
Looking at your board of directors composition, 2 out of 12 directors are women. Is there a plan to increase the women representation to 30% of the board?
Yes. At the next annual general meeting, this time we are proposing increase of the number of directors from 12 to 15. So that's the additional 3 directors. And out of 3, we proposed 1. So that's 30% of the new one. And we do hope that, we can increase more in that in the existing pool of the director as well.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Roongrote Rangsiyopash, the CEO of Siam Cement Group or SCG, and Tanawong Areeratchakul, the CEO of SCG Chemicals. I'm Noelle Lim on ASEAN Speaks by Maybank Investment Banking Group.